to introduce you to Dr. David Young.
Do you often hear people say the country's going down the drain? Do you often hear them say, I don't vote because it doesn't make a difference, they're all the same? I expect Paul hears that a lot, I expect Richard hears that a lot, and I expect Martin hears that a lot. I've certainly heard it a great deal with those of you who've been with me around door to door in Poole over the last year. We hear that over and over and over again. And sadly, for a country that came through 2 world wars on the winning side, we seem to have lost the peace. We certainly have lost the plot as a people. Our survival as a united kingdom hung in the balance last year. A recent symbol of our disintegration as a nation. It's not just that we're falling apart under our own weight or our own apathy. There's a positive agenda to pull us apart. Did you know that on EU maps of Britain, the United Kingdom doesn't appear? It shows regions. The EU agenda is to promote a pan-European state to replace the nation-states of Europe. That's always been the agenda. It's just that we were deceived by Heath and Jenkins in the early 70s when they took us in and they presented it as a common market, which seemed to us like a good idea. It seemed to me like a good idea. I like the idea of a common market. But that relationship that we accepted under false pretenses has become increasingly abusive over the last 45 years. So my subject today is the state of our nation. We are in a sorry state. Perhaps like me, you sometimes feel you hardly recognise your own country, because common courtesy and decency have declined so steeply. It's hard to believe the way some people treat each other these days, from rising road rage and indifference to nuisance caused by neighbours, to abuse of elderly patients deprived of food and water in care homes, and widespread abuse of children from Rotherham and Oxford to God knows where else in the country, we've yet to find out. And maybe like me, you feel increasingly alienated from the media with its relentless focus on the negative and the politically correct. Our confidence in and our respect for traditional sources of leadership has taken a tremendous battering, hasn't it? With scandals tarnishing not only politicians and the press, but the police, the entire banking sector, and even the church. And our increasingly pluralistic society makes it harder than ever to come to a consensus on core values. Even 300-year-old allies within our nation are falling out in the wake of the badly handled referendum on Scottish independence. And to make matters worse, some people believe we'd be better off without our nation-state. And certainly the EU bureaucrats, as I say, are hell-bent on merging us all into the Euro melting pot. But I believe there is hope, provided we all pull together. Most of us believe that the nation plays a vital role in giving us identity and security, as well as a context in which we can develop our lives together. Just as we need our families and our social groups, so we need our countries to contribute to and protect to our well-being. And surely it must be possible to agree on a core set of values that can serve as a foundation for us, since it's got to the point where our survival as a nation depends on us doing that. The death of Lee Kuan Yew last week and his funeral tomorrow are timely reminders, when so many in this country are despairing of the possibility of positive change, that national renewal and progress are perfectly possible. I've been to Singapore, the island city on the tip of Malaysia, quite a lot to and fro between there and Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and the tremendous differences, as you may well know if you've been there, between the two. My grandparents spent their working lives in Malaysia. I've studied this quite a lot, and I'm really interested in it, and I must say I have nothing but admiration for the social and political phenomenon of Singapore, created only in the 60s, surrounded by Muslim states, without natural resources, yet creating a highly successful, corruption-free, can-do culture of its own. And here are some of Lee Kuan Yew's wise words, which I took from a tribute to him that's been circulating says, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to create, in a third world situation, a first world oasis. I'm not following any prescription given to me by any theoretician on democracy or whatever. I work from first principles that will get what will get me there. Social peace and stability. No fight between the races, between religions, whatever. Fair shares for all. Everybody is a homo. Survival, he says, requires you to change, and I think survival requires us to change. Survival requires you to change. If you don't change, then you're marginalized and you will become extinct. If we had not intervened in very personal matters, who your neighbour is, how you live, the noise you make, how relevant is that to us at Poole, how you spit, or where you spit, maybe not so relevant, or what language you use, had we not done that and done it effectively, we would not be here today. Now, what do we want our Britain to be? Most of us do want to preserve and perpetuate the qualities for which Britain is internationally renowned. Fairness, tolerance, decency, and common sense. We do want to build on the platform our history has given us, a great trading nation with strong traditions of democracy, pragmatism, independence, and small business success. We do badly need to rebuild our prosperity and our finances at the national and individual levels after the global crisis of 2008, which, to be fair, wasn't caused just by the Labour Party, though their jumping onto the Tory financial deregulation bandwagon did exacerbate it. We do want and need to stay united in our kingdom. Although we Brits have enough self-discipline to accept austerity pretty well, and better than most, there are limits to what we can endure, especially if the burden's felt to fall unfairly across society. And as real standards fall for most of us, the ancient class fault lines are opening up, wider, and they're becoming obstacles to national cohesion, and I find this deeply worrying. The Scottish independence referendum, however horribly handled by Mr Cameron, did at least yield the result that most Scots want to stay in the Union. But now we need to sort out the constitutional mess we face. Mr Blair sowed the seeds of discontent with a devolution process that was asymmetrical and unfair to England. Mr Cameron managed to turn that into a constitutional crisis by allowing himself to get panicked into last-minute promises to buy Scottish support. The challenge now is to rebalance the powers of our various parliaments and the financial flows between the constituent countries while trying to deliver on the vague vows thrown to the Scots by the Coalition and Labour at the last minute. Now, so let's ask, in the political dimension, given those are the sort of issues that I think we'll agree we face, who can best move our nation forward? As far as the rift with Scotland is concerned, it's hard to see who can help heal it other than UKIP. With the Scots' visceral loathing for the Tories, and my father's Scottish and I go there often and I know that to be the case, and their imminent revolt against Labour in favour of the SNP, it's obvious that none of those three parties can embrace and nurture the whole of Britain. But UKIP, the UK Independence Party, has the interests of the whole UK at heart and at its heart. Only we have a vision for a vigorous United Kingdom, united, independent, prospering again from free trade globally with our fishing industry restored, one nation, proud and free. More generally though, is Labour offering to take our nation forwards or backwards? Ed Miliband, who defeated his more experienced elder brother David thanks to union backing for his fratricide, is very unfortunately and very irresponsibly reviving the class war rhetoric and the anti-profit policies of the 1960s, reversing the consensus on the value of a mixed capitalist economy that New Labour had at least given us. Labour's loss of most of its Scottish MPs to the SNP on May the 7th, 2015, will end its claim and ability to represent the United Kingdom, and I believe mark the beginning of the end for a once-inspired movement that has run into the sands of self-interest and self-promotion. The Tories' claim and ability to represent the United Kingdom ended long ago. They've been banished from Scotland since Thatcher's destruction of the coal and steel industries there, with an unnecessary animosity and apparent lack of concern for the communities that were crushed as a result. More generally, Tory divisions on the EU and their track record of broken promises on EU referendum, on immigration, on no further NHS reorganisation, and so on and on and on and on, make them very unreliable on their own. Their top team of toffs also makes them socially unrepresentative, even in England. What are the Lib Dems? I'm running out of time, I don't have as much to say, I'll skip that bit. In Britain's sorry state, with the extinction of the UK as we know it a continuing threat, common sense has, however, cleared its throat and is now speaking up. There is a voice in British politics that says enough is enough. It doesn't have to be like this. And we're so tired of putting up with things we can't change that we're going to change the things we can't put up with. Surely we can create, and surely we can create, in a first world situation, a first world success. We don't need to be in a political union to trade with it, any more than Canada or Mexico need to be one of the United States in order to trade with the US. And there are two examples of much higher economic dependency than Britain has with the EU. The voice says it doesn't matter where you came from, socially, religiously, ethnically, or in any other way. What matters is that you contribute to our country, speak our language, support our laws and our values, and support social peace and stability. Fair shares for all. It's not about left and right, it's about right and wrong. That voice in the UK is called UKIP. If Lee Kuan Yew and the Singaporeans can do what they did in their third world context, what's to stop us doing what we want to do in our own first world context? Nothing external. Nothing at all. Only our own apathy, fear, and unwillingness to make an effort. I'd like to finish by letting you hear the voice of Lee Kuan Yew from that musical tribute created by a Singaporean last week, which I've edited down to less than a minute.
30 seconds.
May Mr. Lee Kuan Yew rest in peace, and may the rest of us get into gear and do something to make Britain great again.
Thank you indeed, David. That was great.